Okay, welcome to part 4 of the video lecture on section 3.4 for differential equations, looking at complex eigenvalues and eigenvectors. Okay. So I want to start talking about what the graphs of these things look like so that eventually we can figure out what the phase portrait of our system looks like. Okay. So if you recall, we had found a complex solution to a linear system, and so the real part ended up being a real solution, and the real part, of course, is just a pair of real valued functions, x and y, both as functions of t. For the particular example that we found, it happened to be this function right here. X of t was e to the negative t times negative cosine of 3t plus sine of 3t. And I'm just going to refer to 3t as theta to simplify things a little bit. Just to remind you, the eigenvalue that we had worked with in this example was -1 minus 3i. You can see the -1 there, that's the coefficient in front of t in the exponential function here. And then that 3, the absolute value of that imaginary part, is the multiple of t that theta will be. Okay, so in this video I want to just take a look at how we would graph the x and y functions of t, and then we can sort of start putting those together in the phase portrait, which will be the next video. Okay. In general, it's going to be the case that our x and y functions are going to have the form e to the alpha t times a cosine theta plus b sine theta. The alpha will actually be the real part of the eigenvalue. Theta is going to be a multiple of t, and that's determined by the imaginary part of the eigenvalue that you had. The values of a and b are going to be determined by what the numbers were in the eigenvector. Okay. But we want to take a look at how to graph this. And right now, I'm going to just focus on the trig part, and then we'll take a look at what happens when we scale it by the exponential function. Okay. So there's a really nifty thing that if I have a cosine theta plus b sine theta, I can actually rewrite that as some number c times cosine of theta minus phi for some number phi. Okay. So I can rewrite this as a transformation of the cosine graph. And that's generally a lot easier to graph than something like this is. Okay. Now, some of you may not have graphed a transformation of a trig function in a while. If that's the case, if you go to the class website under handouts, there's actually a PowerPoint presentation you can click on that just walks you through how you would graph a transformation of cosine like this. So if you need to review that, I'd encourage you to check out that PowerPoint, or you can also ask about that in office hours if you like. Okay. But our task right now is how do we figure out what this c and what this phi are? Well, there's a nifty mnemonic triangle for figuring that out. Now this is going to be sort of a symbolic triangle, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a and b as the legs of the triangle here. I'm going to put phi here as one of these angles. Okay. Now notice that a goes with cosine, so I've made that the adjacent side. B goes with sine, I've made that the opposite sine of phi, and then capital C is here. Now, this is a symbolic triangle. It's not necessarily going to be an honest-to-goodness triangle. It's entirely possible that a and b are going to be negative numbers, and it's entirely possible that phi is going to be an angle that is not acute. But this triangle can help me to remember how I'm going to figure out what what c and phi actually are. Based on this triangle, I can see that c would be a squared plus b squared square root of that. Okay? And I can also see that tangent of phi is going to have to equal b over a. Now, of course, that equation would have infinitely many solutions. What I would need to do is take a look at the signs of a and b. If I simply plot the point AB in the xy coordinate system, it will land in some quadrant. That's the quadrant phi will need to be in. Okay. All right, and we'll figure that out for this particular example once we've seen why this actually works. Okay. All right, so you'll notice that with this information, I can see that sine of phi would be b over c. Okay. And that's actually going to be true even if b is negative. And cosine of phi is A over C. And then, of course, since sine over cosine is tangent, that does give me that tangent is B over A. Okay. So that information is going to help me to see why this is actually true. What I'm going to do is simply simplify this right-hand side of this equation using the sum formula for cosine. So I'm going to say this is C times, I'm going to view this as cosine of theta plus negative phi. That's just me not wanting to memorize two formulas. I know the sum formula for cosine. This way I don't have to know the difference formula. So that's going to be C, okay, times cosine of theta times cosine of negative phi minus sine of theta times sine of negative phi. That whole thing gets multiplied by C. Okay. Now I can use the fact that cosine is even, so this is the same as just cosine of phi. Sine is odd, so this is just the opposite of sine of phi, and that negative will then cancel with the negative that I have in front. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just write things in terms of A's and B's and C's. Well, A's and B's rather. Okay. So C, we said, was the square root. You know what? I actually don't even need to write what that is. I can just say this is going to be C times cosine of theta. But whoops, sorry, this is cosine of phi, not cosine of theta. And cosine of phi, we said, was A over C. Minus a negative is going to become plus sine theta times sine of phi, we said, was B over C. But now when I distribute that C, I'm going to distribute it here and it's going to cancel. I'm going to distribute it here and it's going to cancel. And notice what I get is just A cosine theta plus B sine theta, which is exactly what we stated here. Okay. So that illustrates that this is a true identity, and this is just a nifty mnemonic device for figuring out what C and phi are for a particular problem. Okay. So let's take a look at the x function that's part of the real part of the complex solution that we found, and let's find the phi and the c for that particular function. So I'm going to draw my symbolic triangle here. So here's my, here's my phi. A was the number in front of cosine. That was -1. B was the number in front of sine. That's going to be 3. So I can easily solve for c. C is just the square root of 9 plus 1, so it's just the square root of 10. And then what I know about phi is that tangent of phi is going to have to equal 3 over -1, or -3. But I also know what quadrant it needs to be in. Because if I plot the point, -1, 3, that's going to be in quadrant 2. So I know that my phi is going to be an angle here that's in quadrant 2, whose tangent is -3. Okay. Now, the fact that it's negative makes a lot of sense because we're in quadrant 2. I'm just going to figure out my reference angle. If I let alpha equal my reference angle, I know that tangent of alpha is just the absolute value of -3, which is 3. Quick reminder, the reference angle is always what you make with the terminal ray and the x-axis. Okay, so then I can see that alpha, is just arctan of 3. I can always use inverse trig for the reference angle because the reference angle is always acute. For phi, I can't use arctan here because the range of arctan is between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. There's no obtuse angle in that range. But I can always use inverse trig for the reference angle, and so then phi would be pi minus arctan of 3. So that's how I can use this formula to calculate the c and the phi values that will work, so that I can write this part of my solution as just some transformation of the cosine graph. Okay, last thing I want to take a look at is what happens if we multiply a trig function by an exponential function. And I'm just going to do 2 examples. In the interests of time here, I'm not going to do the example that we just looked at, because I didn't want to spend class time reviewing transformations of trig functions. That's really prerequisite material. If you need to review that, like I said, make sure that you look at the PowerPoint that's on the class website, or ask me about it in office hours, because I love doing transformations of trig functions. So I'm totally happy to do that, but I want to try to not spend too much time in class just doing review of prereq material. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to graph 2 functions. I'm going to graph y equals e to the t times cosine of t, and I'm going to graph y equals e to the negative t times cosine of t. Okay, so this is just a trig function times an exponential function. Most of our solutions won't be quite this simple, where we've got just cosine. Usually it'll be some transformation of cosine. Okay. But if I'm doing this, I know that cosine oscillates between a high value of 1 and a low value of negative 1. Well, what's going to happen here is we're scaling it by a factor of e to the t. So I'm just going to sketch as a dotted curve, there's y equals e to the t, and as a dotted curve, there's y equals e to the, negative, not e to the negative t, negative e to the t. Okay. So what's going to happen is my cosine function, instead of oscillating between fixed values of 1 and negative 1, it's just oscillating between values that are on this curve. So it's going to look something like so. So as t goes off to infinity, you can see that the oscillations are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, whereas t goes off to negative infinity, I can see that my oscillations are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so that y is going to 0. Over here, I'm just going to have the opposite pattern, because now cosine is going to be oscillating, instead of between 1 and negative 1, between values determined by this function and its opposite. But e to the negative t is exponential decay, so there's y equals e to the negative t. Here's its mirror image, y equals negative e to the negative t. And cosine's just going to be oscillating between points on these curves. So as t goes to infinity, the y value here is going to 0, and as t goes to negative infinity, the y value is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. So in the next video, we'll take a look at how we put functions that look something like this together into the phase portrait, so that we can see what the phase portrait for our system looks like.